Dave, are you with us?
I am here.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am good.
Wonderful.
We're going to go ahead and jump into it. Running just a couple minutes behind. So, I don't think we need you to tell us what is physical therapy, but who would be interested in this career?
That's a great question. I think, Mary describes sort of the interests that I think apply across so many of the healthcare fields. So you're looking at folks who have this interest to serve individuals, to help improve and meet their quality of life goals. So those folks who are typically are service oriented individuals who like the sciences, like the body, like to also figure out puzzles, because it's part of the process of figuring out what the underlying diagnoses may be, and then matching them with appropriate interventions, and then being able to switch and change back and forth when things aren't going the way that we want. So really it's broad in its interests, much like prior program that was shared. We've got folks that are coming in maybe with a psychology background, folks that have a biology background, folks I believe at some point been in law enforcement. So it's quite a wide variety, but it's folks that have that common interest in service, in healthcare, and being part of the process to help bring people back to a quality of life or close to it that they're seeking.
Who's going to be a good fit for Pitt's program?
So lots of changes are happening within the program, and it's exciting change. And so given those changes, I still think we're looking for folks that have a well-rounded education and experiences, folks that have a little bit of leadership, that have some history of service, that have a fairly strong academic background. It's also going to be equally important moving forward. Now that we're a 7-term program delivered over 2.3 years, we also now have a hybrid option. I think students that are very organized, students that are strong in time management, students who show great initiative, students who are good problem solvers and are able to think through some problems to find solutions versus just identifying a given hurdle and being stuck behind the hurdle. I think those are critical things that we would be looking for in folks who I think would be successful and have been identified as successful with our programs in the past, and especially so moving forward with some of the changes that have happened.
And you're talking about these changes. So tell us why. Why have you shortened the program to 7 terms? Why have you introduced a hybrid format? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so this has been a long time coming. Kathy Kelly was here in the very the beginnings of this process, where we were looking at internally at a program and saying, are we providing the most efficient program that maintains a given level of rigor that Pitt is known for? And are there inefficiencies that can be identified? Are there changes that we can make internally that ultimately make the profession of pursuing a doctor of physical therapy degree financially viable for students? And so, maybe as far as 5 years or so back, we started to look at internally with the program and started to look at various stakeholders, from our clinical partners to existing students to graduates and our current faculty, and really begun to identify areas of the program or through those stakeholder groups have identified some areas of the program that might warrant change. One was looking at the value of a part-time clinical experience versus a full-time clinical experience. And while there were values to the part-time, in general, it would appear that there was more of a benefit to offering full-time experiences. Additionally, looking at the way that we have developed the curriculum, looking at the course series, looking at one-off courses, we were able to identify maybe some redundancies that existed within the curriculum, that when we could reduce those redundancies, in addition to eliminating the part-time clinical experiences, created gaps in our program. And when there are gaps in the program, now you can really begin to be creative with how you then move and shift internal parts of the program to maybe improve the efficiency with which it's delivered. So, we were able to quickly identify that we could go from a 9-term program to an 8-term program based on the level of clinical experiences our students were engaged in our program. We were far and above what was required from our accrediting body, but more importantly, we were identifying that our students were prepared at the level in which we wanted them to be prepared upon graduation with a semester to go. And so really our students were showing both in their examination performance and that we were allowing some students to sit for licensure a little bit early, which they're allowed to do, provided they meet certain criteria. And on their clinical performance, they were really achieving outcomes of a graduate student and still having a semester to go. So that was an easy transition for us to go from 9 terms to 8 terms. And then with the things that we just, that I shared earlier, looking at internal structure of eliminating or modifying how we do clinical education and looking at inefficiencies. We found that using some block scheduling, integrating some courses together, we were able to actually get the program down to a 7-term program. Again, with the primary aim of really allowing the DPT to be a viable financial option for students. The hybrid came into that as, I think the dean has made it perfectly clear that we needed to start to think creatively with how we deliver education. And in online learning, while it may not be popular in all the healthcare fields, should be considered and investigated. And I think COVID, amongst all the challenges that it presented, certainly allowed our particular program to say, we can deliver this, and we can deliver this well in an online format. And we haven't even begun to develop it purposely to that. So the hybrid program was really a way to begin to think of how we could reach individuals that otherwise couldn't get to our program. Folks that wanted access to a high quality DPT program that just didn't have the ability to move to Pitt, whether they have a family, whether they have other commitments in the area. And it also allowed us to begin to attract students, different kinds of learners, folks that wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to come to Pittsburgh. People who are living in areas that may be underserved in the healthcare field and want to make a difference within their area now can actually study in that particular region and engage in clinical education experiences in that region to hopefully maybe even turn around what's offered in that area. So again, it's a way of our program being able to move forward some of the initiatives and agenda that the profession has and being able to reach out to a broader scope of learners, but also to impact our culture as a whole and making sure that we're really addressing some of the unmet needs that our communities have. So the hybrid really was a wonderful fit in terms of trying to align with what I know the university is doing, what our profession is doing, and really meeting some of the needs of the communities that we serve.
So exciting.
We think it's exciting, I can get a little verbose about it, but yeah, we're really excited. And the exciting part is we have our first cohort scheduled to enter that hybrid program this fall. Which is really exciting.
So moving into admissions, and we're stick around because we are going to talk a little bit about how to make a student competitive, but I get this question all the time. What are the best undergraduate degrees for students interested in Pitt PT?
And I will say that I don't know that there is a best undergraduate degree, right? What are our most common degrees? Well, obviously they're going to be in kinesiology, exercise science, biologies. We even have some of the chemistries that will pop in there. Those are quite common. We'll see that frequently. We've had some folks coming from the athletic training profession as well popping in. Those that typically fall within those traditional health science-based courses are probably the most common kind of degrees. But as I mentioned before, we don't have a preference for undergraduate degree, and that's purposeful. We want a well-rounded individual. So you can have students that come in complete their prerequisites, but come from the world of psychology, that come from the world of engineering, that bring a whole new skill set to what they can provide to their patient populations. So again, we're wide open. And all of those individuals at some point have been successful in our program. So it's not like coming from a writing background or from a more engineering-based program will put you behind the curve because you just didn't come from that basic health sciences. The Common Core is really our prerequisites. You know, when you complete the prerequisites, you're demonstrating that you have a level of academic ability across a variety of different courses that somewhat speak to the kind of courses that we're going to offer in our program. And when you meet those prerequisites and you're successful at that, everybody's starting from a common base. Yeah, you're going to have some students who might be neuroscience majors when they come in to our program. Are they going to have a little bit easier time maneuvering through our neuroscience course? Probably. But does that mean that folks that have never been introduced to neuroscience before won't do well? Absolutely not. You know, if they're a good learner and have good skills and good studying and are confident in being able to identify resources to help them through the program, they're going to do just fine. So there's no one best, and that's kind of purposeful. But there are common majors that we see.
Another question or another item that I have a lot of questions about are these recommended 150 hours of shadowing with a PT.
Yes.
Is the 150 required, and what are you ultimately looking for students to gain through this experience?
Yeah, so no, the 150 is purposely identified as recommended. And it's just that, it's recommended. It's not required to get 150 hours. We have accepted individuals with 50 hours. We have accepted individuals with 3,000 hours, right? And vice versa, we've not accepted folks for other reasons that have shown that level. But really what those, you know, and this is something internal that I think the profession's still kind of grappling with is, what's the purpose behind that? And do we think what we think we know the purpose to be, is it really happening? But I will share what we're looking for is some kind of demonstration that students or applicants are coming in with an idea of what the profession looks like. And what better way to demonstrate that idea is to get some varied clinical observation hours prior to getting into the program. And that's what we would be looking for. Not so much the volume of hours, but one, did you seek out opportunities to dive into the profession a little bit? That shows initiative and it shows an interest. Were your experiences over a course of time, or did you get them all in your senior year right before you applied? And not that one would be necessarily better than the other, but it's just giving us some indication of your interest and how much have you really dedicated to knowing about the profession that you're applying to. It also allows applicants to create relationships with practicing clinicians who will have an insight, because they've been there, as to what are the characteristics of a successful student in the DPT program. And how could they highlight that as a letter of recommendation for these students to get into our program? So it's allowing you to create some relationships with some clinicians who could serve as that mentor or as that letter of recommendation to get in. So I think those are some of the things that we were looking for. And I think it's just important that students, have varied experiences. So do a little bit, maybe in a hospital setting, do a little bit in an outpatient setting, maybe explore what maybe a school setting would look like. So you get a flavor for the profession. And just as Mary was sharing about that pathway for their program, there are so many options. And so many times, we get pigeonholed into one thing. Oh, physical therapy, sports, or, oh, Dave, you're in physical therapy. Great. Can you give me a massage? I'm like, we're so much more than a massage. And so, I think that helps to break that stereotype of what people think physical therapy may be. Probably longer than you wanted, but that's really what we're looking for with the recommended hours.
So we're going to jump over to, okay, now these numbers are for the residential program or the residential option.
Yep.
Excuse me. But we don't really have numbers for the hybrid option just yet. So we'll include those next year when we see what that those develop into. But in general, we see around 600 applications, admit about 120 students to fill a final class size of 60 to 65 butts and seats in the classroom. What makes a student competitive? How do you go from being one of those 600 to one of those 120?
So that's the competitive part, right? We tell folks the most competitive part is getting in the program. Once you hear the competition needs to stop, and then we need to, group effort successfully get us all through the program and out the other side and into the profession. But what makes a successful applicant are individuals that have a strong academic record, or at least have shown academic progress. So by all means, there are times when we first enter into college life, there's some adjustment periods. All right. We all know that we have these maturity periods, and that's fine. But we need to be able to see that later, as you found your way, that there was some strong academic progress that was made there. So a strong academic foundation is important. It's also important that there be a good communication. And first and foremost, since we don't do interviews, having a strong essay, and it's the PTCAS prompt. So we don't have a program-specific essay, but being able to answer the prompt adequately, but also being able to insert some personal insights as to how your journey might and your interest in the profession could be shown through the answering of that particular prompt. So using good grammar and those basics, that's a basic thing. Now beyond that is what have you shared, or what has the applicant shared that shows us that they know what the program's about and they highlighted the specific attributes that would make them successful in our program. So the essay would be good. Letters of recommendation are also key because we don't do the interviews. We're relying on what they provide in the essay and what others have been able to demonstrate or observe in those individuals through their interactions with them. So the letters of recommendation are key. And they need to be something beyond Dave showed up twice a week. He was well dressed, asked great questions, was polite. Patients liked him. Well, we would hope that would be representative of all the folks that are out there doing observation hours. We want something that goes a little bit beyond that. What personal attributes align with what they know that program to be, or what successful therapists are identified as having themselves. So those letters of recommendation are another significant area that will make a student stand out. I think more recently coming and trying to move more towards a holistic view, we look at what kind of leadership and what kind of service background students have. It's not something that they get scored on. It's something that's just verbally mentioned and demonstrated as to what makes them a good candidate. When you have a long record of service going into a service-related profession, those things stand out. But I think those are the big key things that stand out. Yes, we'll keep it at that.
So outcomes, how successful are Pitt DPT students in gaining licensure and employment after completing the program?
So we have high exam pass rates. We've got high graduation rates. They will vary slightly from year to year, but you're going to see we're up there in the upper 90s, in the hundreds in terms of graduation rate. First, there's different data now that our accrediting body looks at. They look at first-time pass rates and ultimate pass rates. There are some students that it takes a couple of times for them to pass the licensure exam for a whole host of reasons. But in general, our first-time pass rate tends to be in the upper 90s, right? And so they're very successful. I think you look at our employment rates too of our graduates. Even amidst COVID, our recent graduates are gaining employment. The one thing that we have found, just because of COVID, although things should starting to be changed, is it took a little longer to find employment, but they got it. They noticed that they probably had to maybe extend beyond what their original location would be. But they were certainly finding that. So I think our graduates are well prepared for the licensure exam. They're successful in finding employment. And that's been great. And we're excited for that. And it's a great testament to the dedication that our students put forth with the program.
Okay. So now I'm going to hand it over to our guests. Do you guys have any questions for Dave about physical therapy? Go ahead and unmute yourself. I know we are a little bit past 4 o'clock. Thank you so much for sticking around. All right, we have a thank you in the chat and great information. Thank you so much. Well, it looks like there's no other questions for you, Dave. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will absolutely see you later this week, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us and allowing us to share a little bit. We're totally open to questions, so please feel free to reach out at any time. Lots of changes going on here, so I can imagine that you're fielding a fair amount of questions about the program too. So lots of resources to answer those. I'm happy to do so.
I think that's something that we can say about all of our programs, and you're going to hear over and over and over again over the next couple of weeks and next couple of sessions is our faculty and staff are very happy to talk to anybody who has questions, whether it's an advisor or a student or a family. Send them our way. We are an open book, open doors, come chat with us. So anything we can do. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to stick around. Someone had some questions they wanted to talk about afterwards. So if you need anything, stick around. Otherwise, I'm going to stop recording and you are free to move on to whatever your next meeting is, I'm sure.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.